day out there to all of my listeners. And I'd like to welcome you to Is Your Way in Your Way podcast. And for my new listeners, my name is Cassandra Crawley, Mayo, and I'm your host. I also named my podcast after my book. And the name of my book is Your Way in Your Way? And I am qualified, as many of you are aware, to write something like that because I'm in my way. And that's why I wanted to have a podcast for individuals that are noticing that something in them needs to change. They're stuck. They're like, I know what I'm doing now is not what I'm supposed to do, or there's always something else I wanted to do, but I just couldn't do it. So I like to talk about topics related to personal improvement. Also enable you to do some self-reflection, inspire you to make a move, or perhaps it's an opportunity for you to pivot and say, you know what, I think I'm going to do this. And I have a special guest on today. And the title of this podcast is The Stories We Tell Ourselves and How They Keep Us Stuck. This podcast, and even my guest, I'm going to introduce you to her in a second, centers on helping women recognize and interrupt those barriers so you can step into what I call your God-given potential and stop being in your own way. So I'm going to introduce you to Christina Ketchen. Hello, Christina. How are you today?
I'm very well. So nice to be here. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I like listeners. Before we started this, we talked a little bit and found out that we have so many parallels. We are focusing on the same thing. We're both on a mission to make a difference, to help you to get unstuck. But what I like to do now, though, is I want to read her bio so you will understand what qualifies her to talk about what we're going to talk about. Christina is a certified life and relationship coach and heart math practitioner who has devoted more than 10,000 hours to helping people untangle the emotional patterns that keep them stuck. Known for her raw, trauma-informed approach, she blends neuroscience, emotional regulation, and lived wisdom, including surviving a 50-foot fall, to guide individuals and couples towards self-love, resilience, and authentic connection. Christina makes healing practical and accessible, meeting people exactly where they are. Also, and reminding them that they are not broken, they're human, they're capable, and worthy. So I'm ready to kind of peel this onion because I can relate to many of the things that we're going to talk about today. But before we take a deep dive and start peeling, Christina, what was life like for you prior to you becoming a certified life and relationship coach? What was your backstory? What was that all about?
Well, before becoming a life coach, I was busy raising kids. And also in a relationship that was I knew it was inevitably going to the place I really didn't want it to go, which was the end. Okay. And realized through that I was living in a pattern of not good enough in my marriage, which I found absolutely gobsmacking because I believed that I was a good human being. I was definitely good enough. And where on earth did this come from? Yeah. So it was the unpeeling of that. And at the same time deciding I really want to wake up and love what I do and serve. And so I went back to school, and 10 years later, here I am doing what I love. Okay. How did you know what you loved? Because one of the things we both talked about adversity.
and how adversity or our lived experience is where we get probably our deepest wisdom. Um, how did you define, how did you know what you loved? Because a lot of people say, you know, my purpose is to do what I love. And I say that because I tried to figure out what it was that I loved.
Mhm.
So tell us, how did you figure that out?
I hired a coach.
Mm, okay. Uh-huh.
And you know, hindsight is always so clear because I can look back on my years in this lifetime prior to becoming a coach and see very clearly that I was the kind of person that people would come to or go to for advice, for
Hmm.
a shoulder, for support.
Right.
And so that's that's in my DNA, to
Uh-huh.
serve, to help, to be kind, to have your back. A
Right.
champion of the underdog, I have been called a few times.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, so that's that's where that comes from.
Okay.
Always being there and then working with a coach to uncover some questions and open some doors for me that I walked through and figure out that, yeah, this is it. This is what I want to do. And it makes so much sense.
Excellent. So you definitely found value in having a coach.
100%. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. Because a lot of people, not a, but many people will, opposed to a coach, they may like, well, I think I need to have therapy. You know, well, something's wrong with me. Why not therapy? And I'm not saying maybe you did have therapy, um, uh, but yet you were led to have a coach. And I think that's a great thing because I think we all should have a coach or a transformational mentor. Did you ever think of going to therapy? Did you go to therapy?
Yes, I have done plenty of therapy.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It to me, that decision to figure out, or the quest to figure out what I wanted to do with my life and love what I do when I wake up every day, to
Yeah.
me that was a conversation to have with a coach,
Okay.
because that process is, you know, very positive and forward thinking and goal oriented. And therapy's different. And I happened to meet him and I had great energy with him. And that's super important, right? If you have
Mhm.
great energy with your coach and
Right.
feel like, you know, they're right there with you,
Right.
that's a difference maker as well.
Okay. Okay. Let me,
Hmm.
okay, there are a couple things that happen, and we talked about how the deepest wisdom comes from adversity and your lived experience. So, name two or three lessons that provided you with that deep wisdom besides your relationship not working. What were some other things that occurred in your life?
Boy, oh boy. It's a big list. When I
Okay.
put timeline out my life, it's like,
Yeah.
wow, I've been through some bumps.
Okay.
You know, I think one of the biggest turning points for me was losing a cousin at a young age. I was 18,
Hmm.
and it was this exposure to, in the blink of an eye, everything can change. And
Hmm.
in the blink of an eye, we look back on our last moment with that person and wish we could change it. Why are we
Hmm.
living like that?
Right.
So that was a very profound moment. And in the muck of that, in the grief, in the tragedy,
Uh-huh.
you know, I looked at it and said, there's got to be something good to take away from this. And, you
Hmm.
know, hey, within the muck, there's always a diamond, there's always a gem.
Yeah. Hmm. A diamond in the
So
rough.
yeah, and that's taught me that, you know, I've had a few of those lessons and stories throughout my lifetime, and it continues to teach me that when I'm in the muck, when
Hmm.
I'm feeling stuck, I
Hmm.
know that some sort of goodness is going to come out of this. There's
Hmm.
going to be a learning, an enlightening, a leveling up, a deeper understanding that's going to
Hmm.
help me. And
Hmm.
carrying that piece of hope and faith while in the muck, I find that's a helpful tool.
Right.
Because what else do you have?
Yeah, yeah. And another thing you talked about how it's not that we need to be fixed. You said we need truth, some tools, and some emotional permission to feel what's real so we can choose something different. What are some of those tools? And when you talk about truth, what are those tools? What are some of the truths that you've experienced even with your customers, your clients, that enable them to choose something different?
I refer to that we're in this current state, this epidemic of not enoughness. And in all honesty, if we look back at historical self-help and growth, we see that, actually, this has been around for a long time.
Yeah,
It's not
right.
new.
That's
and that's
true.
a very common theme with my clients. And a tool that is a game-changing tool is when somebody is sharing, why they're stuck or what they're stuck in. There always comes a moment where I can interject and say, is that true? Do you know that to be absolutely true? That tool, that question in our back pocket can stop us from spinning down the rabbit hole, can actually shift our brain out of the untruth and onto, okay, well, what do I know to be true? And stop believing the untruth, because the stuckness, as you know, and the stories are so often untrue.
Right. That's true. That's exactly right. So it's like that question. Ask yourself, is that true? I'm not good enough. Is that true? Well, who told you you weren't good enough? Yeah, that's great.
And
Yeah, go right ahead.
yeah, that goes, it's easy to pose that question. And before we can pose the question, we need to have some awareness around what we're listening to all day.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And that's when, because what it was, 93 or 92, whatever the number is, percentage of what we do throughout the day comes from our subconscious automatic thoughts.
Yes.
And we're never questioning them. We just, they're our truth, they're our story. And we need to hear what's going on in order to be able to then ask, hey, do I know that to be true? So it's a very easy question and tool to have in your back pocket, but we need to hear what's going on first and foremost.
Yeah. And what you do is you help them hear what's going on. Right.
Yeah. When we talk to somebody, we can start to hear ourselves too, right? That's the essence of healing.
Yeah, that's true. This resonated with me because I am a person who feels too much, overthink everything, exhausted by emotional whiplash and questioning. When you talk to people with those characteristics, we can say, what's happening with them? Why are they overthinking? Why, um, like me, you give me something, I just think about it and I'm like, okay, well, maybe blah, blah, blah. Why are individuals like that? Now, I know we're all different, but what are some things or denominators or key themes that you've seen with individuals that have those characteristics?
Well, again, I think it goes back to that point we just touched on, which is listening to the lie and the story, and then we compound that with the language and words we use. I'm too much. I feel too much. Is that true? Aren't you allowed to feel what you feel and not judge yourself for it?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because I remember I used to teach Sunday school, and it would take me all day to prepare because I'm overthinking it. Like, okay, maybe I should say it like this, maybe, and my whole day is gone. I'm like, what? So I'm thinking back then is what I've done is good enough. It's okay. I'm not going to know everything. I don't profess to know everything. And I realized doing that, my day, even when I started my podcast, okay, what am I going to say? How am I going to say this? Overthinking, emotionally exhausted, because a lot of times my physical is not as tired as my mental stability, so I'm just overthinking. You talked about, you talk about the heart math, the Gottman method. What is that?
So two different things.
Uh-huh.
Heart math is, I don't know if you've heard of the Heart Math Institute.
I haven't.
So they have done a whole bunch of research and have a whole bunch of science behind the energetic field that our heart emits. And it's why you walk into a room and you sense somebody's energy or that somebody's off. Like, we feel this.
That's right.
And so they teach and talk a lot about the nervous system and its correlation to our heart rhythm and our breath, and therefore our thoughts. So they have some practices that teach us how to, what they call heart-focused breathing. So we slow down our breath just a little bit, and we deepen it just a little bit. And we breathe in that space while focusing the mind on the area of the heart and chest. So that's doing two things. That's calming us down and opening the door to that parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calm, which is where we can reason, where we can, breathe. And it also takes the brain out of all of the thinking and doing and all the things if it's focusing on, what does it feel like in my heart as I breathe in and out? What does my chest feel like? Just feeling it. So, and they have more exercises than that one. They have an app. It's brilliant. I love it. You can open up the app and the Heart Math app, the picture on it is a little heart and a plus sign. And you put your finger on the back on the camera and it's reading your heart rhythm. And it walks you through a 2 or 3 or 5 minute breathing exercise that you set up to mirror your breath. And you watch how long it takes for you to get your heart into what they call coherence. And coherence is where, okay, we can have a calm conversation. I can tune into and hear my intuition. So it's a beautiful set of tools. Heart Math is lovely. Yes.
Right. And that's HEARTMATH.
Correct.
Right. And you can get that app. So when's the best time you're like, okay, I'm overthinking, or like I said, overthinking, feeling too much? Is that a time that I should check that app out, or when's a good time to check that app out?
Well, if we're talking about chronic, every day, all day, I think too much. I look at it and go, maybe there's space to look at creating a new baseline, which would mean I'm going to practice heart math for 3 minutes twice a day. Right. Let's start there. Put it in my calendar and say, I'm going to do this for 14 days. Even though they say the research says that it's 21 days to create a new habit.
Right. Exactly.
But I look at the brain just like, okay, I'm just going to do this for 5 days. And then you get to 5 days. So I'm going to put another note in my calendar. Right. I like to put a note on my calendar that says, hey, you've been doing this thing for 30 days. How are you feeling? Because it turns my brain off of worrying about, how we sit and say, oh, I've been doing this for 2 months. And then if we really look at the data, we haven't been doing it for 2 months. Right. So it takes the brain off of that long-term goal and outcome and into just the daily task, which is just doing the thing every day. So I don't know how we got there, but yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Just talking about, when do you use the app? When's a good time to start using that app? That's how we got there. So what are 6 simple habits that's going to change your life?
Well, it's funny. One came up for me today. One of them is journaling.
Okay.
And if we are not talking to somebody to expose the thoughts, we can certainly express them on paper and ask if they're true. Like, we need to process this stuff. We need to get these experiences out of our body. Like, don't you agree? What's your take on that? The storage?
I have I have journaled for years. I mean, years, and I don't want to date myself. And I've moved a lot. Okay. I remember moving 7 times within 7 years, literally moving from one state to another.
Wow.
And one of the things that I grasped are my journals. And I'm like, if anybody gets a hold to these journals, I don't know what they'll do. They'll think this girl is crazy. So it's like they are sacred to me. I still have them. I take them everywhere. And then there are times where I'll look back years and I'm like, wow, I was out of my mind. Just thinking
Mm-hmm.
about where I used to be. And I'm like, this is some crazy stuff. But journaling helps me. And I used to do it daily. I don't do it as much now. Um, but I still do it. So that's one habit that has changed my life, particularly when I look back on it and see how far I've come.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, to answer your question. So what are some other habits then besides journaling?
The heart focused breathing, the journaling,
Mm-hmm.
um, the asking if I know this to be true. So it's instrumental.
Uh-huh.
And I also love a good gratitude practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And whatever those 6 simple habits, you have to be consistent.
Yes. And,
Okay.
the work of getting to a place where we have embodied self love, it's
Mm-hmm.
not a one and done. And it's not okay, I need to pick up these 6 habits. It's
Mm-hmm.
one thing at a time,
Okay.
one moment at a time.
Okay.
Try again, fumble, 2 steps back, start again. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a process that requires a level of tenderness that we often don't give ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
it does take time, and it is doable.
Uh-huh. Let's talk about self-love. What is that?
Mm. Self love. Yeah, it's a big one because it has a bit of a rap. It's like, no, it's not just about having a bubble bath and,
Right,
taking a time out.
right.
Self love for me, my definition of self love or the meaning of it is that when we can show up and not question or spin on things that happen in our life, which means to me that we hear our thoughts and our thoughts are our biggest fan.
Mm-hmm.
Our
Mm.
thoughts are not judgment or criticism, right? It's the foundation of self love is the words that we use in our head, which
Mm-hmm.
we've touched on earlier. It always comes back to that. We
Mm-hmm.
often people say we say things, and it's like, whoa, would you ever say that to your best friend or even a
Right,
stranger?
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you also said there's a misunderstanding about it,
Mm.
about self-love or emotional healing that you love to debunk.
Mm.
Um, and you also said the patterns that we have is something that's trying to protect us,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. And I'm very curious about this question because I remember I've gone to therapy. I don't know how many times out of my life, and therapy was good for me for the times that I had gone. Um, One of them asked me, "Did I love myself?" And she says, "I don't think you do." And I was like, "Really? What does that mean? Do I love myself?" So by you talking about it's not just the bubble baths and the vacations and the nails and the toes. It's really about the thought process. I am not good enough. Is that loving yourself, downing yourself, criticizing yourself, judging yourself? Um, so that's why I wanted my listeners to get an understanding of self love. And if they do love themselves, what will come out of that if they're practicing and demonstrating, exemplifying self love? What comes from that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there are many pieces here, but One of the pieces when I talk about self-love or that I've learned is the word intention. And if we are in line with our intention in a conversation that we're about to have, our intention with making a certain decision, when we're in line with that intention, we walk away from the moment with less self-doubt. There's so much self-doubt. Did I say the wrong thing? Was that like, we can look at it and go, no, I'm going into this conversation. This is my intention with the conversation. And when we're in line with that, maybe that's through journaling, right? You prepare for that conversation and you're feeling it out and getting in line with what is important to you. That can take away a whole lot of self-doubt and a whole lot build up confidence, essentially. When we go in knowing what is true for us, what is important to us in any given moment. And I also think that there's a circle back piece to self-love, which is we are going to be activated. We are going to be triggered. Patterns have such long legs. Yeah. And it's about noticing it and coming back and going, hey, I can circle back to that, with that person, to that conversation. I can take a look at why. Self-love would be taking a look at why I responded the way I responded, or why this feels so icky, and get an understanding of where it comes from, what it's telling us, what we've attached to it, and healing it through that exposure.
Right. Right. And what you're talking about to me is like self-discovery, and it's work. It's not a one and done. You know,
there's no easy button.
Oh, absolutely not. You have to make up in your mind, or make the decision. I'm going to get better, or I'm going to be healed, or I'm going to love myself, and that's why I want to ask you, how do you untangle those beliefs and those behaviors that keep us stuck?
I think there's for me personally, I've had moments where I realize, oh, I learned this. And I can see where I learned it. Okay. So that means I didn't actually choose it. And now I can choose it. What do I want it to look like?
Yeah, interesting. That brings me to, I was a guest on a podcast, and the question came up about my background, like being the first African-American female to do this job and to do that job. And when I was in those positions, how I was treated, or the behaviors that people parlayed into me. Just, like one time I was a general manager of a hotel, and the individual was angry about something. They wanted to see the GM because that's the highest you can go in the hotel. And when I walked out, she looked at me and said, "Oh, no wonder the hotel is running like this." And then his question was to me, "Why do you think she said that?" I said, "Well, she wasn't born like that. She learned that from somebody in her background. None of us are born like that, so, and for you to say what you said, you think back on, where did that come from? Why did she say that to me? Why are they stereotyping me? Why? So I appreciate that, and how, to get unstuck when you say to yourself, I'm not good enough, or I can't write this book, or I can't start coaching, or I'm not good enough for this job. But kind of think about, where did that come from? And that's why our title is the stories that we tell ourselves, how they keep us stuck. So I love what you said, when individuals are having those limiting beliefs, that I call them, to start thinking about, where did that come from? And then there's some things that you can't figure out. And that's when you get the help, or the coaching, or the therapy. So to me, that's a great scenario of how you can untangle things to help you get unstuck. Yeah. Yeah.
It is, we
yeah.
can get unstuck.
Yeah.
We can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If we want to.
That's the key.
Yeah. If we want to. It's just like
Yeah.
an alcoholic. If you want to get sober, you can't.
Yeah.
I can't do it for you. That's just an example.
Yeah.
So, I want to talk about love again. You said that love feels like walking on eggshells. You remember that? Like, why does
Unhealthy love is like walking on eggshells.
unhealthy love? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so for someone to have unhealthy love, what does that look like?
Whew. Unhealthy love feels like we're not seen, we're not heard,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
we're not safe.
Mm-hmm.
Eggshells can, fundamentally that's what that is about.
Mm-hmm.
Unhealthy love can look like disregard for your emotions. People talk about there's the gaslighting piece, right? The lack of, we'll just tuck that one aside and just speak to a lack of accountability,
Mm-hmm.
defensiveness,
Mm-hmm.
avoidance.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Okay. Now let's turn that around and talk about what's love.
Feeling seen,
Mm-hmm.
feeling heard, feeling safe.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to be ourselves, to just be ourselves, and feel loved for that. And it's one of the misses in dating, right? We turn on our shiny self when we start dating somebody.
Yeah.
And really what I want to see, like when I was in that position, I'm like, no, I want to see the real you. I'm showing you the real me because I can be as my quirky, silly, whatever self, because I want you to fall in love with who I really am. And vice versa. And we don't do that. Yeah.
Right. Right. And when you're in that unhealthy love, as you indicated, that can get you stuck because of that may have been a pattern that you've been in for a while, unhealthiness.
Well, there's a high probability that you learned it. So it's very familiar. Right? We very often choose what we know. Even if what we've known and witnessed isn't good for us, we choose and are drawn to the people that have similar characteristics to our primary caregivers, whether it was good for us or not.
Right.
So the history, like you say, it's long.
Right. Yeah. So it's like you say, you're not broken. You're just repeating what you learned.
100%. Yeah. What you learned, what was role modeled, what you were taught, what you picked up,
Yeah, that's good. Because one of the chapters in my book is titled Your Childhood Has a Lot to Do with Your Adulthood. And when you understand that and you go back to that and think about that, that awareness does a lot for you. That I'm aware where that came from. But is that true? As you indicate, is that true? And you talked about like people go through things and they think somebody should apologize to them. Okay. And did some things to you growing up and they don't apologize. How does a person heal?
From what I have learned, the true way to healing is when we forgive the person who hurt us. And that's a real hard nugget when somebody has hurt you, to sit in a space where you're like, oh, I send them love and I forgive them.
Right.
And the only way that we can get to a place of forgiveness is via compassion.
Right.
And if we could sit with the person who hurt us as if we were two 12-year-old children.
Yeah.
And ask questions to understand, what is it like to grow up in your house? You know, are you seen? Are you heard? Are you loved? Are you safe? We would have this understanding of, wow, now that I see that, I understand why you are the way you are. This makes sense.
Right.
This tracks.
Right. And you're not saying forget it.
No, you can't forget it.
Right. You just forgive.
Yeah.
Right.
And, you know, that forgiveness piece is really, there's another layer to it, because there is the forgiving of the person who hurt us, but primarily it's the forgiveness of self, you know, and the letting go of the hope of what we wanted it to be, what we thought it was, and the grieving of the hope around that,
Right.
which is completely designed by self.
Yeah.
So that self-forgiveness piece is quite a big nugget to look back and go, oh, I can see I contributed this, I fostered this, I chose this, right? We're like, what? I didn't choose this. You get where I'm going with that.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Christina, your experience and in the work that you do, I can attest that there are a lot of listeners that have gleaned from this conversation, because it's kind of like the title of my book, Is Your Way in Your Way? You know, it's kind of like, and we shared earlier when I said it took me forever to write a book. And I realized that I was in my way, because I'm like, I can't write a book. What am I going to say? What are people going to think? I don't want them to know my story. On and on and on and on. And it was my thought process. And it just like, I don't want them to know what I've been through, you know. And then something says, well, you don't have to put everything in there. And I'm like, well, yeah, you know. So just overthinking, you know, playing that back and forth and back. It took me a while. But when I finally did, it was just the gratitude that I did something. And I'm like, if I could do it, anybody could do it. You know, it's like my listeners who are stuck. There are things that they want to do, and they're just not, they just can't do it. And so this listening to you, the journaling, and who said that, and where did that come from? I'm not broken. I'm just repeating what I've learned. I'm not a bad person. Back in the day, that person that did that was bad, but that doesn't mean I was bad. This is just my perspective. So it's like a mindset. And I know that the information and the nuggets that you have shared is, for some, it's revolutionary, because they're like, okay, all right, okay. So what I'd like you to do is, I know that you have, you do training, there's a video that you did that I've really liked, and I started doing this and haven't done it in a while. You know how you go to people and you say, how you doing? I'm doing okay. You know, that's how do you get individual, how do you engage with people? How do you, that's just fluff to me. You know, well, how is your day going? My day is going good. Well, what in your day went really well for you? You know, to
I don't
kind of,
know. I'm busy. It was
right.
busy.
Yeah, right. So I wanted you to kind of talk about, you talked about a retreat you attended. And in that retreat, someone asked, how are you? And I think that was the question that someone asked that really resonated with you with that retreat, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
It was how they started the retreat.
Uh-huh.
And we were guided to not use the word fine, good,
Uh-huh.
okay,
Mm-hmm.
and that when we were asked how we were, we needed to take a minute to tune in and share something more genuine and more accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really interesting because, again, as we touched on earlier, the way we function is through automatic, habitual, subconscious ways. So when somebody says, "Hey, how are you?" You're like, "Good. How are you?" Are we really asking? How are you? At the beginning of this episode, I said, "How are you?" And we went straight into talking. I never did hear how you were.
Right.
But you have this awareness. Like, I have this awareness around it now. And I think that big piece comes to mindfulness. And people hear that word and can get a little, it has its stigmas to it. But I think what I like to refer to it as being present.
Right.
Like when you ask the person walking by on the beach or at the dog park, you say, "Hey, how's your day?" Are you holding space for the answer?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Wow. Christina, how can my listeners get in touch with you? And I think you have a complimentary something on your website that they could get in, talk about that.
Yeah. So everything that I do can be found on my website, which is ChristinaKetchen.com. Ketchen is spelled just like kitchen, but with an E.
Okay.
And on my website, I've put up a training, and it's not insignificant. I'm quite proud of it. I think it's a really nice piece of work and very applicable to what we've chatted about today. So you can find it at ChristinaKetchen.com/masterclass. And it is, if you're not liking the way you're responding to situations, or you're not liking the way you're feeling in situations, or you're wondering where you want to take your life. Those are big topics.
Right.
And so in this little masterclass that I've built, it gives an exercise, what I call dreamscaping, to actually shift some of that. And it uses neuroscience and a specific process at a specific time of day for a specific amount of time to do that thing in order to see change, because consistency is key. So I have a podcast as well, and I write every week, so that you can find all that on my website, and it links people over to Substack, where I live in that world as well.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. What's next for you, Christina?
Well, I am working on finding a publisher for my book.
Okay. All right.
So many parallels. And just shifting a little bit in regards to trying to reach more people. I have this real, it's this mix between, I know that this is my career and I get paid to do this. At the same time, it's so much lighter to walk through life loving who we are. It's so much lighter. Yeah.
Yes.
And that I just want to share that.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that, because when you're in your purpose, it's nothing like it. And not that every day is going to be a great day, but you're going to have more great days than bad days.
That's right. I had a moment. I woke up in a day today, and I'm like, I need something. Okay, I have a lot of tools, so I grab my journal, right?
That's right.
And help myself move through it. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, we have our moments.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, Christina, thank you so much, my listeners. I know that you have gotten a lot of nuggets from Christina. And I would ask you or charter you to listen to this podcast again and again, particularly for those who know that they want to be somewhere else. You want to take your life in a different direction. And because you're not able to, or you're stuck, listen to this. I guarantee that it will start changing your pattern as you continue to listen to this podcast. And with that said, like I always say, listeners, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. Christina, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I have learned a lot. I went into this podcast like I do many of them to learn as well, because I definitely don't know it all. And again, as I always say, bye for now. God bless you. And I love you, and it's nothing you can do about it. And again, Christina, thank you so much.
Thank you, Cassandra. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you.
Uh-oh. Oops. I can take that out. I don't know why it's doing that. Uh-oh. Well,
there you are.
Christina,
she disappeared.
Wow, that was great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, you given me something to really think about. I was telling somebody last night that there are 3 people in my life that, I've presented my whole career, and I never really practice. I practice in my mind. People say, well, practice in front. I'm like, nah, I don't want to practice in front of you. Let me just kind of do this. And so as I'm launching my business, one of my friends said that, okay, well, tell me what you do. Okay, now based on that, okay, now how are you going to do that? What are you going to do for individuals that want to work with you? And I had a tough time answering him. And there are 2 other people that I don't want to talk about it. And I realized that there's something about these 3 people where I stall. And I asked myself, and I respect them all. They're doing extremely well. And then I realized that I don't think that I can articulate like they can, or I'm good enough.
Comparison.
Yeah. So just, our conversation today just really helped me. I'm like, okay, now why is that? Why are these 3 people? And we're very close. I just can't do it with them because I think that I don't know, but I'm gonna figure it out.
Yeah, I'd be curious, like, what do they remind you of? What do you feel? And it's not what do they remind you of? I'll just toss this your way and take what you want, throw away what you don't. But it's, what do I feel in my body when I'm with this person? And is it familiar? Like, there's something there. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a good question. One's a guy and the other 2 are women, and they are up there on the totem pole, CEOs and board members, and I don't know, but I'm going to take what you said and think about it. What are they representing for me?
And you also hear the obvious in that, which is imposter syndrome.
And that's what I said to him. He said, well, how can that be? I mean, you got this, you're intelligent, you did this. I'm like, it's like a fraud. Like, I'm not, yeah.
I'd be hearing those thoughts and asking if they're true, Cassandra.
Right. I know.
Yeah.
Well, again,
thank you so much.
And I will be sending this to you, and it's going to be next year because next year's almost here.
Yeah, crazy.
Right. Yeah. And I wish you the best in your endeavors, and you will do well. And I am going to be your friend so I can see what's going on with you. And I can't wait for your book.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye for now.
We'll be in touch. Have a great day.
Okay. All right. You too. Bye.
Bye.